What if fasting isn't the reason you're not losing fat, but your body is actually fighting against you? You've been doing everything right, skipping breakfast, pushing through long hours without food, drinking water, black coffee, staying disciplined while everyone else gives in, intermittent fasting, exactly as it's supposed to be done, and yet the scale barely moves. Worse, that stubborn belly fat seems like it's not just staying, it's expanding. At some point, the doubt creeps in. Am I doing this wrong? Why is this working for everyone else, but not me? Because here's the part no one tells you. Your body doesn't always see fasting as a smart fat loss strategy. Sometimes it reads it as a threat, and when that happens, everything changes. Instead of burning fat, your body can quietly shift into survival mode, holding on to energy, slowing things down, and redirecting fat storage straight to your midsection, especially that lower belly area that refuses to budge no matter how hard you try. It feels unfair, confusing, almost like your own body is betraying you, but it's not random. There's a hidden hormone response that can override everything you're trying to do. Even if your fasting routine is perfect, a biological alarm system that can flip without you even noticing, triggered by stress, routine, even your mindset. Your body might think you're in danger, not trying to lose weight, and buried inside all of this is a single mechanism, a switch that decides whether your body burns fat efficiently or locks it away for later. Most people follow the rules of fasting, but they never realize this switch even exists. And once you understand this one mechanism, everything about fat loss will finally make sense. My name is Dr. Leon Hartwell, and for over 15 years, I've worked at the intersection of metabolic health, nutrition science, and hormone regulation, helping people who feel stuck, frustrated, and confused about why their bodies won't respond the way they should. Throughout my career, I've specialized in intermittent fasting, fat metabolism, and the complex hormonal systems that quietly control whether your body burns fat or stores it. I've worked with individuals dealing with stubborn weight gain, insulin resistance, and metabolic slowdowns, many of whom came to me saying the exact same thing. I'm doing everything right, so why isn't it working? And they weren't wrong. They were following the plans, skipping meals, eating clean, staying disciplined. From the outside, everything looked perfect, but internally, their bodies were operating under a completely different set of rules. I've seen countless people blame themselves when in reality their biology was working against them. What makes this even more frustrating is that this topic is widely misunderstood, even among health enthusiasts and those deeply committed to improving their fitness. There's a missing layer of understanding that most advice simply doesn't address. My approach has always been grounded in evidence and real-world observation. I've spent years reviewing scientific literature on stress physiology, hormonal balance, and metabolic adaptation. But just as importantly, I've seen how these mechanisms play out in actual people, day after day, case after case. Patterns begin to emerge when you look closely enough. You start to realize that fat loss isn't just about willpower or consistency. It's about how your body interprets what you're doing, whether it feels safe or threatened, supported or stressed. And when those signals are misaligned, even the best strategies can backfire. That's why my mission has never been to simply tell people what to do, but to help them understand why their bodies respond the way they do. Because once you understand the root cause, everything else becomes clearer, simpler, more effective. And today, I'm going to show you exactly why fasting may not be working for you and what your body is actually trying to tell you. If you've been feeling frustrated, stuck, or even defeated because fasting isn't giving you the results you expected, you're not alone. It can feel incredibly confusing when you're putting in effort, staying disciplined, and still not seeing your body respond the way it should. So let's break this down in a way that actually makes sense, step by step. First, you're going to understand what's really happening inside your body when you fast under stress. Because fasting itself isn't the problem, but the internal environment you bring into it can completely change the outcome. Then we'll uncover the hidden role of cortisol, a powerful stress hormone that can quietly override your body's ability to burn fat. This is the piece most people never see, yet it influences everything from your energy levels to where your body stores fat. From there, I'll walk you through the biological chain reaction that happens beneath the surface. Stress leads to cortisol. Cortisol raises your blood sugar. Elevated blood sugar triggers insulin, and insulin signals your body to store fat instead of burning it. Once you see this sequence clearly, a lot of things will start to click, especially why this process tends to target one specific area more than others: stubborn belly fat. There's a reason your midsection is often the hardest to change, and it's not just about calories. We'll also look at what scientific research reveals about stress and fat loss resistance. Not in a complicated or overwhelming way, but in a way that helps you connect the dots between what studies show and what you're personally experiencing. After that, we'll go through some of the biggest mistakes people make with intermittent fasting. Mistakes that seem harmless, but can actually push your body further into fat storing mode. And most importantly, I'll show you a simple, practical way to adjust your approach so you can regulate cortisol while still getting the benefits of fasting. Because this isn't about quitting fasting, it's about doing it in a way your body actually responds to. You'll also get a clear idea of what kind of results you can realistically expect when your body shifts out of stress mode and back into balance. By the end of this, you'll have a completely different perspective on why your body has been holding onto fat and what it truly takes to switch it back into fat-burning mode. A lot of people step into intermittent fasting with a clear plan and strong discipline. They follow the rules exactly: skipping meals, extending fasting windows, cutting out processed foods, and they expect their body to respond accordingly. But instead, something unexpected happens. The weight doesn't move, or it moves slightly, then stalls. And in some cases, that stubborn belly fat becomes even more noticeable. This is where the confusion really sets in. You're eating less, fasting longer, being more consistent than ever before. So why isn't your body changing? The answer isn't a lack of effort. It's something much less obvious and far more powerful: chronic stress. Not just the kind you feel emotionally, but the constant low-level stress your body experiences every single day. Deadlines, poor sleep, overthinking, under-recovery, even the pressure you put on yourself to do everything right, it all adds up. And your body doesn't separate these stressors. It responds to all of them the same way, by shifting your internal chemistry. This is where the real problem begins, because fat loss isn't controlled by calories alone. It's heavily influenced by your hormones. And when stress stays elevated for too long, it disrupts that hormonal balance in ways that make fat loss incredibly difficult. What makes this even more challenging is that it tends to worsen with age. Your body becomes less resilient. Hormonal responses become less flexible. Sleep quality often declines, which only amplifies stress further. And over time, this creates an environment where your body becomes more protective, more resistant to change. Yet most advice still focuses on one simple idea: calories in versus calories out. While that concept isn't entirely wrong, it's incomplete, because it ignores the signals your body uses to decide whether it feels safe enough to burn fat in the first place. The same goes for fasting. It's often presented as a guaranteed solution, as if simply not eating for longer periods will automatically trigger fat loss. But that's not how your body works under stress. If your system is overwhelmed, fasting can actually reinforce the problem instead of solving it. It's like trying to withdraw money from a bank account that's locked. No matter how many times you try, nothing comes out. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because access is restricted. And in this case, that restriction is happening internally, driven by signals you can't see. To understand why this happens, we need to look at what stress is doing inside your body. To really understand what's going on, you need to look at one key player inside your body: cortisol. Cortisol is often called the stress hormone, but a more accurate way to think of it is as your body's survival hormone. Its job isn't to make you gain fat, it's to keep you alive in situations your body perceives as threatening. Here's how the chain reaction works. When your body senses stress, whether it's from lack of food, poor sleep, emotional pressure, or even overtraining, it increases cortisol levels. This is your body's way of preparing for action. Once cortisol rises, it sends a signal to increase your blood sugar. Why? Because in a survival situation, your body wants quick, available energy to either fight or escape. But elevated blood sugar doesn't just float around without consequence. It triggers the release of insulin, the hormone responsible for moving sugar out of your bloodstream and into your cells. And here's where things shift. Insulin doesn't just store sugar, it also blocks fat burning. When insulin is elevated, your body suppresses fat oxidation, the process where stored fat is broken down and used for energy. In simple terms, your body stops burning fat and switches into storage mode, and that stored fat often ends up in one specific area, around your organs, in your midsection. This is known as visceral fat, and it's closely tied to stress-related hormonal activity. A helpful way to think about this is like an emergency system. Cortisol is like an alarm going off inside your body, and when that alarm is active, your body doesn't focus on long-term goals like fat loss. It focuses on immediate survival, holding on to energy, storing resources, and staying prepared for what it believes is a threat. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes perfect sense. Your body doesn't know you're trying to lose weight for aesthetic or health reasons. It only knows that food intake has dropped and stress signals are high. To your system, that combination looks dangerous. Now layer fasting on top of that. Fasting on its own can be beneficial, but when it's combined with already elevated stress levels, it can amplify cortisol even further. Instead of creating a calm, fat-burning state, it can push your body deeper into this survival response. This creates what you could call metabolic confusion. Your body is receiving two powerful signals at the same time. There's no food coming in, and we might be in danger. And when forced to choose, your biology will always prioritize survival over fat loss. The result is the exact opposite of what you're trying to achieve. Instead of burning stored fat efficiently, your body becomes more protective, more resistant, and more focused on storing energy, especially in the areas most associated with stress. When you look at the scientific literature, this pattern becomes much clearer and much harder to ignore. Multiple studies have consistently shown a strong connection between elevated cortisol levels and increased abdominal fat, particularly visceral fat. Research coming out of institutions like Yale University and University College London has demonstrated that individuals with chronically higher cortisol levels tend to store more fat around their midsection, even when their overall calorie intake is similar to others. What's important here is not just weight gain, but where the body chooses to store that weight. Visceral fat, the kind that accumulates deep around your organs, has been repeatedly linked to stress-related hormonal activity. And cortisol appears to play a central role in directing fat storage to this exact area. At the same time, studies in metabolic physiology have shown that chronic stress doesn't just influence fat storage, it also reduces fat oxidation. In other words, your body becomes less efficient at actually burning fat for energy when stress hormones remain elevated over long periods. This creates a double effect. More fat is stored and less fat is burned. Research on intermittent fasting adds another layer to this. While many studies show positive effects of fasting on weight loss and metabolic health, the results are not universal. Some individuals respond extremely well, while others see minimal or no progress. When researchers dig deeper, one variable keeps showing up: stress. Individuals with higher stress levels or disrupted cortisol rhythms tend to experience weaker fat loss responses to fasting. In some cases, their bodies compensate by increasing hunger signals, reducing energy expenditure, or holding onto fat stores more aggressively. There are also studies examining how cortisol interacts with insulin sensitivity. Elevated cortisol has been shown to impair how effectively your body responds to insulin, making it easier for blood sugar to remain elevated and more likely to be stored as fat. So even if you're eating less or fasting longer, your hormonal environment can override those efforts. This is why two people can follow the exact same fasting routine and get completely different results. One body perceives safety and burns fat efficiently. The other perceives stress and resists change. Across multiple studies and clinical observations, the conclusion remains consistent. Fat loss is not driven by fasting alone. It's determined by the hormonal environment in which that fasting occurs. And when cortisol stays elevated, that environment shifts in a way that makes fat loss significantly more difficult, regardless of how disciplined your routine may be. Now that you understand what's happening internally, the next step is adjusting your approach so your body actually feels safe enough to burn fat again. Start with sleep, because this is where everything begins. Your body regulates cortisol through your sleep-wake cycle, and even a few nights of poor sleep can elevate stress hormones significantly. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of consistent, high-quality sleep, going to bed and waking up at roughly the same time each day. This alone can start to rebalance your hormonal environment. Next, take a closer look at your fasting window. Longer isn't always better. If you've been pushing into very aggressive fasting, 18, 20, even 24 hours, your body may be interpreting that as stress. Pulling back to a more moderate window, like 12 to 14 hours, can often produce better results because it reduces the overall strain on your system while still providing metabolic benefits. At the same time, you want to actively lower stress signals throughout your day. This doesn't require anything extreme. Simple, consistent habits can make a powerful difference. Regular walking, especially outdoors, helps regulate your nervous system. Exposure to natural sunlight supports your circadian rhythm and hormone balance. Even a few minutes of slow, controlled breathing can shift your body out of a stress response and into a more relaxed state. How you break your fast also matters more than most people realize. Instead of jumping straight into high sugar or heavily processed foods, focus on a balanced meal with quality protein and healthy fats. This helps stabilize blood sugar and prevent sharp insulin spikes that can interfere with fat burning. Another factor that often gets overlooked is stimulant use during fasting. Relying on excessive caffeine, multiple cups of strong coffee on an empty stomach, can push cortisol even higher. While a small amount may be fine, overdoing it can work against you without you realizing it. It's also important to build in recovery. Not every day needs to be intense or perfectly optimized, including days where you ease off, whether that means shorter fasts, lighter activity, or simply more rest, gives your body the space it needs to recalibrate. Timing matters as well. If you're going through a particularly stressful period, mentally, physically, or emotionally, it may not be the right time to push fasting aggressively. Supporting your body should always come before challenging it. Many people unknowingly make the same mistakes. Fasting too hard, neglecting sleep, and combining intense training with already elevated stress levels. These patterns don't create faster results. They create resistance. The goal isn't to do more. It's to do what works with your body, not against it. Consistency, balance, and recovery will always outperform extremes when it comes to sustainable fat loss. When you start making these adjustments, the changes won't happen overnight, but they will begin sooner than you might expect. In the first 1 to 2 weeks, the most noticeable shifts are internal. Your body starts to come out of that constant stress response. Sleep begins to improve, even if just slightly at first. You may find it easier to fall asleep or wake up feeling a bit more rested. At the same time, your energy levels start to stabilize. Not a dramatic surge, but a subtle, steady improvement where you feel less drained throughout the day. This phase is less about visible fat loss and more about creating the right internal conditions for it to happen. Between weeks 3 and 8, things begin to shift more noticeably. As cortisol levels become more regulated, your body starts improving its insulin sensitivity. This means it can handle blood sugar more efficiently, without constantly storing excess energy as fat. You may also notice a reduction in cravings, especially those sudden urges for sugar or processed foods. Hunger feels more controlled, more predictable, instead of erratic and overwhelming. This is often when the first signs of fat loss begin to appear. It may not be dramatic, but it's consistent. And more importantly, it feels different, less forced, less like you're fighting your body every step of the way. By the second to third month, the changes become more visible and more sustainable. That stubborn belly fat, which once felt completely resistant, starts to gradually decrease. Your midsection begins to look and feel different, not just smaller, but less inflamed and less tense. Energy levels tend to level out in a more stable way. Instead of highs and crashes, you experience a steady sense of clarity and endurance throughout the day. Your body also becomes more metabolically flexible, meaning it can switch between burning carbohydrates and fat more efficiently depending on what it needs. What's important to understand is that this process is gradual by design. Your body isn't just losing fat, it's rebuilding balance. Hormones are stabilizing, stress signals are lowering, systems that were once working against you are now working with you. And that kind of change doesn't come from extremes. It comes from consistency, patience, and giving your body the signals it needs to finally let go. Before making any significant changes to your fasting routine or lifestyle, it's important to recognize that your body is unique and your health history matters. If you have conditions such as type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, thyroid imbalances, or any other hormonal disorders, your response to fasting and stress can be very different from someone without those challenges. In these cases, adjusting your routine without proper guidance can sometimes do more harm than good. The same applies if you're dealing with any chronic illness or ongoing medical condition. Your body may already be under a higher level of internal stress, and adding aggressive fasting on top of that can amplify those signals rather than improve them. Medication is another important factor to consider, especially anything that affects blood sugar levels, such as insulin, or other glucose-regulating drugs. Fasting can alter how your body responds to these medications, sometimes leading to unexpected drops or fluctuations in blood sugar. This is why it's essential to consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making changes if you're currently on any form of treatment. It's also worth emphasizing that more is not always better when it comes to fasting. Extreme approaches, very long fasting windows, excessive calorie restriction, or pushing through intense hunger signals can increase stress hormones and create the exact hormonal environment that blocks fat loss. What feels like discipline on the surface can sometimes be interpreted by your body as strain. Another key point is individual variability. Two people can follow the same routine and experience completely different outcomes. Genetics, lifestyle, sleep quality, stress levels, and hormonal health all influence how your body responds. This is why a personalized approach is far more effective than copying a one-size-fits-all strategy. Instead of forcing your body into a rigid system, the goal is to work with it, adjusting based on how you feel, how you recover, and how your body responds over time. Paying attention to these signals is just as important as following any structured plan. Approaching this with awareness, flexibility, and the right guidance ensures that you're not only moving toward fat loss, but doing it in a way that supports your overall health and long-term well-being. If you've been feeling like your body is working against you, like no matter how hard you try, things just aren't changing the way they should, understand this clearly. It's not your fault. Your body isn't broken. It isn't failing you. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do: protect you. Every signal, every response, every bit of resistance you've been experiencing is your body trying to keep you safe in what it perceives as a stressful environment. And once you see it that way, something shifts, because instead of fighting your body, you start working with it. You start making small adjustments, getting better sleep, easing off extreme fasting, managing stress in simple ways, and those small changes begin to send a completely different message internally. A message of safety, stability, and balance. And that's where real progress begins. Not through perfection, not through pushing harder, but through consistency, through showing up every day with a strategy your body can actually respond to. You don't need to overhaul everything overnight. You don't need to be extreme. Even the smallest improvements, repeated daily, can create powerful momentum over time. Because when your body finally feels supported instead of stressed, it starts to let go, naturally, steadily, and sustainably. This is about understanding, not just effort. And once you have that understanding, you're no longer guessing. You're no longer stuck in cycles of frustration. You're making decisions with clarity, and that changes everything. If this helped you see things differently, take a moment to support it, like the video, so more people can find this information. Subscribe for more insights that actually explain what's going on inside your body. And share this with someone who's been struggling, someone who feels like they're doing everything right but still not seeing results. Because sometimes the biggest breakthrough isn't doing more, it's finally understanding what's been holding you back all along. When you work with your body, not against it, that's when real transformation begins. Now that you've started to understand how stress and cortisol can interfere with fat loss, there's another layer to this that most people never see. But it explains something even more frustrating. Why some people lose weight and then gain it all back, sometimes even faster than before. It doesn't make sense on the surface. You follow a plan, you finally start seeing results, and then suddenly your body seems to reverse everything, almost like it's trying to return to where it started. That's not a lack of discipline. That's biology stepping in again. Because behind this pattern is another hidden mechanism, one that affects how your body processes energy, how it responds to food, and how easily it stores fat over time. It's closely tied to something called insulin resistance, but not in the way most people think about it. In fact, many people have early signs of metabolic damage without even realizing it. Everything might look normal on the outside. You might not have any diagnosis, but internally, your body could already be shifting into a state where it becomes more efficient at storing fat and less efficient at using it. And once that switch begins to flip, it changes how your body responds to everything: fasting, dieting, exercise, even healthy eating. There's another hormone quietly controlling your metabolism, influencing how your body partitions energy and determining whether the weight you lose stays off or comes back. Most people never connect these dots. They think they just need more discipline, more restriction, more effort. But the truth is, without understanding this next piece, you can end up stuck in a cycle that repeats itself over and over again. Lose weight, regain it, start again. In the next video, you'll uncover what's really happening beneath that cycle, how insulin resistance develops silently over time, and why addressing it is the key to making your results not just visible, but permanent. Because once you see this mechanism clearly, you'll understand why your body behaves the way it does, and how to finally stay in control of it.